Welcome to The Culture. We rest at the pulse of the community, providing all things news, music, fashion, events, and everything that we talk about in between. It's a lifestyle. We are The Culture. Welcome to The Culture. I'm your host, Jessica Garrett Motkins, and I am joined today with Dr. Steve Gallen III, who is the Vice Chair for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be back home amongst friends and family here on The Culture. Always excited.
We are excited as well, Dr. Gallen. For several weeks now, you've been able to hear from the parents, hear from medical experts, and most recently the governor on the question as to mandate mask or not. Please tell us about the board item that you authored and how you amended it.
Yes. Prior to the committee, I proffered a board item on a Thursday. That's the deadline that we have as school board members. That board item has several provisions to provide for updates and regarding protocols, including masks. Up until that particular point, the district as a school board had not spoken on the issue of masks. Our superintendent had expressed several concerns regarding it. We had several meetings in which masks were declared to be optional. But subsequent to that, the positivity rates had increased dramatically in our community, and we had to respond to the data. Ironically, Jessica, when I proffered the item on a Thursday, the State Board of Education had not met yet. They had not established any protocols, any guidelines, any parameters. But I did proffer the item on Thursday. They met that Friday morning. And ironically, my item paralleled directly with the provisions that they outlined, and it included an opt-out provision. Fast forward to the committee meeting, had an opportunity to present my item to my colleagues, get feedback, have some perspective as relates to their sentiments regarding the issue. And again, the item adopted several co-sponsors. I left out of committee with 5 co-sponsors of the item. So the item had the above the necessary number of votes to pass, and it passed in committee. We get to Monday where the presentation was made by the medical experts, and it was a very, very compelling argument. Up until that particular point, the discourse had really been predicated in personal opinions, politics, some levels of emotion, but we were able to drill down through those medical experts to the science of this particular issue, of this pandemic, and ultimately of how masks help keep our community, our employees, and most importantly, our children safe. So that at that particular point, I digested all of that information. On that Monday, we fast forwarded to Wednesday, and what unfolded was after about 90 speakers, I presented my item, and I ended with an additional amendment to the item that made masks mandatory.
And so just going back to that opt-out clause, you amended your original board item to not offer that.
Yes. My original item had an opt-out provision. When I made the amendment, I eliminated the opt-out provision and provided for masks to be mandatory only with a medically endorsed accommodation. That was it. So it was not going to be an optional provision based on the data. Obviously, there have been a lot of things that have transpired relative to Broward and Alachua County. They had already met with the State Board of Education. There had already been some discussions around particular sanctions, quite frankly, some punishments. So I was very much aware of that. So were my colleagues. But at that particular point, I was so proud that with a 7-1 vote, we voted not out of fear, but out of commitment. We voted not out of fear, but out of courage and conviction as relates to what we believe and what science has told us is in the best interest of our children's health, welfare, and safety.
And what do you say to those parents that feel as if the mask mandate will hamper their learning? They will be in discomfort for the day. What do you say to those parents?
If there's a juxtaposition, I say, first of all, as a parent, one of the only 2 board members in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools that has a school-aged child. I have an 8-year-old that will be going into 3rd grade. So I empathize with them as parents. I'm committed to my child's learning. I'm committed to the learning of their children. but the most importantly commitment that we must have, and the commitment that's reflected in the Constitution of the state of Florida, is a commitment to not only learning, but a commitment to life. So we cannot have learning if we lose lives. So I don't think that's an appropriate issue to bookend, but that does reflect the reality of the day in the state of Florida, and quite frankly, in some places around the nation, Texas, for example. We've been asked to bookend some of these particular issues against safety and health and welfare of our students. And what we know about the COVID-19, and most specifically and recently, the Delta variant, is that it is deadly. It is deadly. It doesn't care whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, or whether you are rich or poor. This virus is deadly, and we have to do everything that we can and implement all that we know to ensure that our employees and most importantly our children are safe. And that's what I would say to the parents as a parent of a school-aged child in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools.
And with Broward and Palm Beach County also mandating masks, how did that factor into you being able to make this courageous decision in the face of all of the opposition?
It didn't have a factor relative to that, because obviously I think it would be disingenuous to say we contemplate what happens in Broward or Alachua County. And at this particular point now, Jessica, we're talking Palm Beach, we're talking Hillsborough. The shoes are dropping throughout the state. So right now you have the 4 largest school districts in the state of Florida that have taken the appropriate approach to protect children. So, however, our decisions are based on our local conditions. So we really can't contemplate what happens in another community, because we obviously represent the voters in Miami-Dade County, and we have to look and assess the data in our particular area. Was I mindful of what transpired? Absolutely. Did I have an opportunity to watch the State Board of Education? Obviously I did. And that is all a part of the process of doing my own due diligence as relates to what may or may not be the argument of the state, what may or may not be really a contrary action to law, and quite frankly, to stay abreast as relates to what particular consequences, if you will, of whatever action we take as a board that we may face. But those consequences as elected officials, those consequences as a parent, but most importantly, those consequences as a living, loving, and breathing human being are consequences that 7 out of the 8 board members that voted are willing to face.
Now, you mentioned Alachua County, you have Palm Beach, Broward, you have the largest school districts in Florida all mandating masks. Politically, which I don't think is a part of the conversation, but I would like to just get your perspective. How does that affect a national conversation on mask mandate as it relates to Florida?
Well, I think it has a significant influence on the national conversation. Obviously, politics is local, but as we look at things across the country, this political issue has become a statewide issue. But obviously, when I reference what's happening in Texas and other places around the country, this is obviously a national discussion. More importantly, when the president of these United States, the most powerful nation in the world, weighs in on this particular state issue, it has significant influence and significant weight as it relates to how significantly important this is to the health, welfare, and safety of not only children and employees and people in Miami-Dade County, but as states and districts across the country look at this particular issue, because this is not concentrated just in Florida, but Florida is one of the states that is at the epicenter. And I think our decisions as large school districts in the state of Florida, individuals that are collectively and individually committed to caring for children, committed to following the law, committed to the health, welfare, and safety of employees, committed to parental rights and choices and engagement, but take this collective decision individually, it makes a very, very bold and strong statement as it relates to our commitment and understanding and belief in conviction and science.
Awesome. So I want to go ahead and take this quick break. And when we come back, let's discuss President Biden's involvement. Let's talk about the close of school last year and where that may factor into some of the learnings for this school year. We'll be right back right after this.
Thank you.
Come witness the revival of the Orange Blossom Classic as it's never been seen before. Live and breathe the rivalry as Florida A&M University takes on Jackson State University in an unparalleled match, years in the making. Do yourself a favor and don't miss out. Orange Blossom Classic, Labor Day weekend at the Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens. Buy your tickets now. Tickets on sale now at orangeblossomclassic.com/tickets.
Thank you for joining us. We're here with the Vice Chair for Miami-Dade County Schools, Dr. Gallen. We're here talking about the mask mandate. When we just braked, we were talking about also President Biden, his involvement. I wanted to know if you were able to read the stories about President Biden getting the Department of Education to move against governors banning masks in their state, as well as treating this issue as a civil rights issue. Did you have any thoughts on that? Are you aware of that stance that President Biden has taken?
Absolutely, and I think it's a very, very affirmative stance. It's the standing on the right side of the issue. I've often said that education is the final frontier for social justice. So I think as a civil rights consideration, I think it's in alignment with something that we need to consider, knowing that a virus such as the COVID-19 pandemic, from a health and wellness and quite frankly educational standpoint, is going to disproportionately impact children from communities that are Black, that are Hispanic, and that are poor. And again, that is something that obviously has an adverse impact on civil rights opportunities. So absolutely, I think our president and they're weighing in on this, not only in word, but in deed, and quite frankly, in financial support, is prudent. And it once again affirms that we are walking toward and standing on the right side of history on this particular issue.
And last year, schools closed with students on campus and a mask mandate. Were there any learnings that you all are factoring in for a better on-campus experience for this school term?
Yes, last year we had a hybrid model where parents had an opportunity to educate their children through a virtual model, but also parents had an opportunity for in-person learning. Let's face it, Jessica, there's no substitute for in-person learning. For a student standing before a living, breathing, competent, caring, and compassionate teacher who is ultimately a human being. Research and data and practice in life have all shown us that. But obviously, as we transitioned last year into a very unknown pandemic, as we transitioned into conditions that did not have a vaccination option, we had to implement those particular provisions. And at that time, we stood in support and in appreciation of the state of Florida for their provisions of flexible funding. So their recognition of the option that should be provided to parents without penalty financially to the district is something that we fully embraced, and quite frankly, we're grateful for. But this particular issue now is down to where there is no other option but in person, and parents don't have another option in terms of having virtual learning outside of enrolling their children in Florida virtual or Miami virtual homeschool model. So right now, the 80, 90, 100% of our parents may show up at our schools with their children, and we have to take the precautions necessary, like social distancing, sanitization, and most importantly, and most recently, and most controversially, masking of students.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you read what they're doing in Texas? The school systems have added masks to their uniform policy. They were able to find a loophole to defy the governor in a way in which the governor was not able to have a stance over a uniform policy. Were you aware of that? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I thought that was a very clever approach. Obviously, when people are facing crises and when people are facing challenges and when people have their backs up against the wall and their commitment challenged as it relates to the health, wellness, and safety of children, we do find creative ways to do what we need to do and to do the right thing. In this particular case, I think Texas and those school districts found and explored a way. But that was just one way, because as we know recently, the courts in that particular area continue to somewhat support the actions of the school district. The governor of Texas has not been successful fully in the courts to render a final decision on this issue. But as anything, there's a lot of game to be played, and I don't mean game as in ha ha. There's a lot of game to be played in the legal system, in the political system, and quite frankly, in the system of public opinion. And that particular court really is speaking loudly. So if you look at those particular courts, Jessica, the court of public opinion is very in favor of supporting a mask mandate. The legal courts are now somewhat siding with the parents who want to support a mask mandate, not only in Texas, but the governor here in the state of Florida had that case, his request to have that case denied on yesterday. So the state of Florida is denying that request to toss it out. So it's recognizing that a mask mandate does have some merit, and let's put it in the court and let's try that case.
And I understand that there are protocols in place that schools will be able to follow in trying to ensure safety for the students. And they're also going to evolve. What will be some of the reasons why those protocols would evolve and be changed?
Data, research, and what we continue to learn about this virus. Dr. Anthony Fauci mentioned the criticism that has come from certain sectors of this country regarding the CDC. It's been suggested that the CDC doesn't have a consistent message. The CDC, as he indicated, is responding to the inconsistency of the virus. The virus is not a stable virus. It's an evolving virus. We went from a coronavirus, and now we have a Delta variant, and there are some contemplations about another variant that may evolve. So as the virus evolves, as the data evolves, as information revolves, as vaccination strategies evolve, so should our protocols. As we learn something, listen, we're about 18, 19 months in civilization of dealing with this virus. This is not something that's been around for 10, 15, 20 years, where we have all of the information and we know all that we need to know. So part of learning is analogous to evolution. So that's why protocols evolve, because we learn more and we have to adjust, we have to pivot based on the most available, recent, and data-driven and scientific information.
Has your discussion evolved to a point of talking about children being vaccinated to go to school with the COVID vaccine, those who are of age?
We've not gotten to that particular point of a vaccination mandate. I think that obviously is something that is dramatically different, that deals with a number of issues relative to whether a child, not only a child, but we have adults who cannot be vaccinated because of their own pre-existing health conditions. So I think that's another layer, a much more deeper conversation that has that happen. And it really is something that cannot be a one-size-fits-all remedy. So no, we have not extended that kind of a discussion. And that's something that obviously would bring even more controversy, rightfully so, and much more challenges, because some people don't get vaccinated because they distrust the system. But we had some individuals who passed away up in Broward who didn't get vaccinated. And I think one or two is because of their own pre-existing health conditions. So there are a number of reasons, obviously, with adults, and obviously there will be a number of reasons with children that we have to contemplate and consider. So right now, what's universal, what's not intrusive, what will not cause any physiological damage or adverse impact will be the wearing of the mask.
Have you been made aware of what the penalty is for going against the governor as it relates to this mask mandate?
No, as you're aware, we're not. We've not been notified in writing of our position of noncompliance at this particular juncture. What we do know is that after the hearings, after the meetings, if you will, in Broward and Alachua County, there were no determinations about what the penalties or the sanctions would be. The direction was for the Commissioner of Education to go and continue to review what the options were. Obviously, the state board chair made several references to what some sanctions could include. 3 of the 4 obviously are pragmatic, are possible. Notifying a district of requesting public information access to what a district is spending. That's an available option to anybody in the public pursuant to Oprah. providing a report to the legislature. That's an available option for the State Board of Education. Making recommendations to withhold certain funds from school districts, that is under the scope of the Department of Education as well. But the fourth one is not under their authority, and that is to remove elected officials from their office. So when the State Board of Education makes reference to that, they're citing a possibility under which they have no authority.
Can you, before we leave, give us an update on sports in our schools?
Our athletic program, as you know, I'm a strong fan and supporter of, is up and running. Friday Night Lights will be shining brightly tonight in Dade County, throughout the state, and quite frankly, throughout the country. We have one of our high schools is actually in California playing. I know some will be playing at Traspal. I had one of my schools that played last night. So our high school athletic programs are up and running. Our cheerleading, for example, I'm very excited, continues to move forward as a competitive sport. I'm glad I was able to proffer that item to get that support from my colleague for cheerleading being a competitive sport. So our athletics and our activities are up and running, and that brings us a lot closer to some degree of normalcy in our schools and give our children some outlet for not only learning, but for living and being active and enjoying themselves and being able to realize what we experience as a part of our adolescence. And again, that reaffirms how the school system plays a major role in the overall scheme of how we live our lives and conduct our daily affairs.
Well, before we leave, Dr. Gallen, please give us some closing thoughts that you would like for with our viewers.
Back to school. This has been a tremendously challenging, enlightening, but inspiring past 18 months. As I stated previously, back in March when we made the announcement that we would be out of school, we thought would be a period of 2 weeks. We thought we would take the spring break plus an additional week to get an understanding of what this COVID-19 pandemic would mean for each and every one of us. As I mentioned just previously, what we know then or what we didn't know then, we know now. And what we know now and what we don't know now, we'll know more a year from now. So we're still learning, we're still evolving. But what I said at the onset, Jessica, is that no matter what was before us, that journey will require us to stick and stand and work together on behalf of our community, our school district, and most importantly, our children. So for the listeners, I'm very, very glad that people took heed. I want to say thank you to the culture. You have been a tremendously supportive and consistent resource for getting information out, for providing a platform. And I think all of us, in terms of our means to engage the public, to engage parents, to engage the community, those means have been expanded. Look, over a year later, we now have the culture, which has now become a positively influential staple of communication in this community, and I believe throughout the state and nation. So again, salute to you, and I thank you. We've gone through some tremendous challenges, from learning management systems, the K through 12, and time and time again, the board, we rose to the occasion. Our superintendent and our administrators, they led and continue to lead. And we are excited about the upcoming school year moving forward. So I say to our parents, communicate with your principal, contact your child's teacher, make sure that your child is prepared for school with all of the resources and supplies that they need. And if you don't have them or need assistance, know that we're here to support you. And make sure they mask up. And if they're eligible for a vaccination, get them vaccinated. Get that shot in the arm. And know that we continue to be here for you. And we're looking forward to a very exciting but very enlightening school year with everything that's happening now that we know, and the things that may happen that we don't know about. But together, we'll prosper.
Yes, we will. I was surprised we didn't have any live questions today. I saw some comments about Governor DeSantis doing something and made a statement right now while we were here live. I'm not sure what that statement is, but I know that this is an evolving situation. Things are constantly going to be updated. This is where we are right now. And we thank you, Dr. Gallen, for bringing us the latest with Miami-Dade County Public Schools. We thank you for authoring a board item that I believe that you had almost full support from your colleagues, and support from many of the parents who were right there with you on requiring a mask mandate. Thank you, Vera, for your comments about masks saving lives. We appreciate you in watching and being supportive. And also, just thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate bringing information to you like this. Don't forget to join us live tonight on YouTube Live, Facebook Live for another edition of My 2 Cents. Grab a drink, set your clock for a good time. And as always, thank you all for joining us.
The Culture is produced and owned by the Culture Media Group and cannot be reproduced or broadcast without written consent. All rights reserved 2021.